Welcome back to Become a Calm Mama. I'm your host. My name's Darlene Childress, and I'm a life and parenting coach. And today on the podcast, I've invited Brenda Yoder to come to talk about her new book, which is called Uncomplicated: Simple Secrets for a Compelling Life. And on the podcast, we focus on one of her secrets, which is contentment. And we kind of dive deep into what contentment is, how to cultivate it, and what are some of the obstacles that come up in our mind when we are trying to be satisfied with our life. So I think you're really going to love this episode. Brenda is a counselor, a speaker, an author, and an educator. And so I think you're really going to love listening to her and learning from her. And I also talk a little bit about my marriage on this podcast. So listen up for some of the tips on ways that I have created contentment in my marriage. All right, here we go. Welcome, Brenda, to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, you're going to share a little bit about your book, Uncomplicated, and then we're going to take one of these values, contentment, and we're going to kind of break it all down. Introduce yourself, tell us a little about the book, and then we'll get into our topic.
Sure. I'm Brenda Yoder. I'm a licensed mental health counselor. I'm also a school counselor. So I currently work in a K-4 building part-time. I'm a mom of 4 children who are all young adults and currently a grandma to 3 little ones.
Congratulations.
That's a new in my life. I am a therapist, a former teacher, school counselor, and I'm also have been a dairy farmer's wife. So I live in the middle of Shipshewana, Indiana, which is a little Amish-Mennonite community in northern Indiana, and was a dairy farmer's wife for the first half of our marriage. And so we currently live on a family farm. I've been a working mom for the majority of my professional life. I stayed at home for about 10 years with my kids when they were younger, but I've been a working mom, either full-time or part-time, in the last 20 years. So uncomplicating your life and growing contentment is not the Instagram slow down your life, dreamy life. It really is a sense of values clarification no matter where you live. And I wrote Uncomplicated for a couple of reasons. One reason is that as a therapist, I was realizing that a lot of people were losing skills that used to be embedded in our culture. Basic life skills, basic problem solving, basic middle of the road thinking. The other piece is just living in an area where we're the number one tourist destination in the Midwest because people flock to our area because we're kind of like a hallmarky town. And people come because they want to be among the Amish because there's something there that they want in their life, but they don't think they can have because they would have to be Amish to have it. And I really wrote Uncomplicated: Simple Secrets for a Compelling Life to say, you know what you want, you can actually have. We just need to clarify it and we need to model it more. Uncomplicated really was birthed from this need of needing to see values lived out that used to be common in our grandparents' generation, but have become less common because we're so inundated by technology, social media, and by all of the things that are antithetical to a healthy lifestyle that everyone's trying to figure out how to get. And it's much less complicated than what you think it is.
Yeah. We see that, I think, sometimes in the winter, there'll be all these holiday movies and it's like, these small, quaint towns and simple lifestyles or whatever, or prince and princess are involved sometimes. But we want sort of whatever that nostalgic, slow paced, everyone knows everybody community kind of thing. And possibly some drawbacks to that, traditionalism and things like that, maybe not open-mindedness, da, da, da. So there's like some good things about change, but also the simple ways of living and the kind of the thing we're drawn to is probably that uncomplicated, less chaotic, less busy. And you're right that you look at that on an Instagram or go to this little town you live in and you're like, well, that's so quaint, but totally unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And your book is really saying it's not about where you live or what you have or don't have. It's like more internal of how you view the world and what you value and what you think about. And so I love how you said that this book is really clarifying values. The moms listening, They want to raise emotionally healthy kids, one of the themes of
Mhm.
this podcast. We want to have our children grow up and be people who aren't chronically dissatisfied with their life and unhappy and, unfulfilled. So we're like, okay, how do we do it? Well, if we just say to moms, oh, it's contentment, it's gratitude, it's, purpose, it's mission, it's service, whatever the themes are. And then they're like, oh, okay, I got to make sure I do that. I got to make sure. And it becomes like this check. That's not really the way to achieve it. It's really to model it within ourselves, to cultivate these values within us. And the value we're going to talk about is contentment, one that you start with in your book. Before we get into contentment, can you just like kind of list off some of the other values that you dive into in the book?
Right. So I'll quickly mention the other
Mm-hmm.
9. And these are kind of their virtues, mindsets, behaviors, because what we believe is what we think is what we do. That's
Yeah.
cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's
Yeah.
how our brain works, it's how our body works. So they include contentment and then resourcefulness, practicality, fidelity, equanimity, and forbearance, which are old-fashioned words for that calm, even-mindedness in difficult situations, and also self-control. Stewardship, interdependence, being grounded and humble. The last one is foresight, which really is about thinking about your heritage and legacy. I may be missing one in there, but
Yeah, I have the book here, so I can
yeah,
look
but
at
I
it.
think that I think I kind of went through the order. I didn't count on my fingers if that was 10 or not, but
Oh, prudence,
prudence. Okay, and that one sounds like, oh, prudence,
like
that's
being a
like in the
prude.
Victorian era, but
Mhm.
no, prudence is really this pause to be able to think about cause and effect. So
Mhm.
so that we can slow down our mindset and so that we
Mhm.
aren't so impulsive. So that's
Yeah.
prudence on a short scale.
Yeah. In my program, the primary thing I teach, I call it the pause break. And it really is when you're recognizing that you're either becoming dysregulated or you are, you can even actually do it on reflection afterwards. I teach the concept, the pause break. And it's just really
Mhm.
stop whatever you're doing and then reset your biology, or reset your body, and then reset your mind.
Mhm.
So the audience is very well, they're like, oh, we could call it prudence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just pausing. Yeah. Good. So let's get into contentment. And what I love about the book is you could probably like use this book for a whole year or something,
Mhm.
like 1 month of the year you take one of these themes and you apply it to your life and you practice it and you learn about it and you dive deep into it, and then another month and really use a whole year to uncomplicate your life. Because I think sometimes we read books like this that are, we're like, okay, I'm gonna do all of it today. Like I have to be prudent and I have to have my family legacy and I have to have contentment. That's not what we're saying. It's like slow it down, take one at a time. So I wanted to do that on the episode, is just take one at a time and talk
Mhm.
about one theme.
Yeah,
I
and I
love to
do
do
have
that.
at the end of each chapter, it's called the next steps or simple
Mhm.
steps.
Mhm.
There's about a dozen next steps you can take. And I
Yeah.
think that's what's important, is because anything we need to do, we need it in bite-sized chunks, right? Our attention span is decreasing. Everything feels overwhelming. So we
Mhm.
just need to always take that best next step and say, I don't have to do all the things. I'm not going to change my life today. It's these small habits over time that make a difference.
Yeah. So, and we're going to give a bunch of those in this episode, which is great. So stay tuned to get your pencil ready, people. Okay. So tell me, how do you define a lack of contentment, like, or discontentment?
I think
Hmm.
it's always wanting that thing that's always out of your reach. So for me personally, I realized a few years ago that I was always seeking the one thing, the next experience, the next goal, even when I had achieved a lot of things. And I think, as parents, this is so natural, because are we ever really content and satisfied with our children's grades, with their behavior, with what they're supposed to be doing? When I think about, as a mom, we tend to always be thinking ahead. What if, or when then? When
Hmm.
this happens, then I'll be at this place.
Yeah.
Just like when my kids were home, I kept on thinking, well, when they're at the next stage, then this is going to be. And when I really finally realized that, oh, this was it, I only had a couple more years at home with all my kids home, and some things needed to change because I was a reactionary parent. So I think contentment comes back to this element of, if today is all I had. In fact, I use the term in the book called, if today is as good as it gets,
Yeah. What if this
What if,
life is as good as it gets?
yeah, what
Is
if
what
this
you're,
life is as good as it gets? And it
and I
comes
like that
from
today,
the
even what if today is the as good as it gets?
right. In
Yeah.
fact, that's really where this contentment hit me smack in the face was during the pandemic. It
Hmm.
was about day 2 or 3 of the shutdown. And I was sitting out on my front porch and I was so restless. And I was like, when are things going to be back to normal? And that's when this
On
email,
day three, you felt that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when this email came into my inbox from a newsletter that a mentor of mine had forwarded. It was a reference to an opening line of City Slickers. And there was Billy Crystal looking in the mirror and saying, what if this is as good as it gets? And that
Hmm.
line really challenged me because if things never got back to normal, could I be satisfied and content with what was? And it
Hmm.
really hit me in the face because I had to think about what if this is it? What if nothing really ever goes back to normal? What if can I be happy and content in today? And I looked around and I was observing nature. I mean, it was in the spring, right? This all happened in March, so my daffodils were blooming. And I started really being drawn to nature in a way I had never been done before. Why? Because I'm a busy working mom and we've got kids and we're running around and we've got kids in college and we're at sporting events. And it was just like everything stopped. I had to come to the conclusion that if life never got back to what I knew it was, could I be satisfied with what I was given, which was
Hmm.
my family, a home, so many different resources that I think when you're discontent, you take for granted because nothing is ever enough.
It's not good enough. Yep.
No. And I think as parents, when we do model this, when this is our internal driver, our kids pick up on that. I went to grad school when I was 40 to become a therapist, and it was a 3-year program. It was full time, 1,000-hour internship. And I had 4 kids at home, and I had one who was getting ready to go to college. The challenge to get A's, like that was always my lane as a student, always,
Yeah.
right?
That was the standard you had for
Yeah,
yourself.
I don't get anything less than an A. And reality was my daughter was graduating. Life was incredibly busy. I had 4 kids who were in sports and I couldn't get an A. Like it was either be present for my kids and that's when we started talking, C's get degrees. The bottom line is C's really do get degrees.
Well, and our family became D equals diploma.
Yeah, there you go. So I think that whether it's in relationships, in your marriage, in your relationship with your kids, with your material possessions, or just with if today is the only day we have, can I be satisfied and content? It doesn't mean that it's an element of happiness. Contentment does
Mhm.
not equal happiness. Contentment is a sense of I am full and I don't need more.
It's like a good, like satisfied. I keep thinking of the word satisfied. It's like a good meal when I know I've had a delicious meal. I just had a delicious meal last night, actually. And I really couldn't eat anymore. And there was still some food left there, but I was so delightfully full and everything was delicious. And I just was so content. It
Right,
didn't need anything else. There was stuff there. And I was like, my belly is telling me I'm full. And I just enjoyed the twinkle lights in their little restaurant. And it was just great. And I was like, oh,
right.
yeah.
No,
So that
that's a
feeling.
great
Mhm.
example. And I think in prior generations, we saw that more. We saw simple living, whether it's because of necessity, whether it's because of true contentment. My parents lived in a generation where you bought something and it lasted for a long time. You didn't buy something unless you really needed it. And actually marrying a farmer, that was how I was socialized as a young mom,
Mhm.
was your costs went into the farm. It didn't go into all of the household things. It didn't go into the newest and best. You got something when you needed it
Well,
more
the
than
newest isn't always best anymore. I
no,
mean, a
it
lot of the
isn't.
products are meant to only last a certain amount of time so that we purchase again and again. And that I think is one of the obstacles when we get into that of like modern society and how the value system has shifted in terms of what the messages are that we get in society from all sorts of media or just different pressures that we influences that we have. There is a lot more emphasis on purchasing. And so, yeah, it does. They have to create discontentment in order to create desire for something new and better and more and different.
Yeah, and the
Mhm.
algorithms are driven towards that, right? Like
Yes.
we're not even content, if you post something, you get 20 likes, well then you want more than that. Well,
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
60 likes.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
it's all like, what you get fed, like in terms of sponsored ads and things like that, or even non-sponsored ads. It's like whatever you're searching for, a lot of times is your pain, kind of you're putting it into the internet and then it spits you right back into, oh, you're in pain, here's a solution. And usually it's purchasing something. And
right.
so it doesn't lead to the long-term contentment that we're talking about because it creates
Mhm.
more of that unrequited desire, right? It just doesn't really fulfill full.
Right. And
Mm.
you were talking about being a calm mom and learning how to calm your body and learning how to regulate. And I think a lot of this discontentment is driven within our body.
Yeah.
We tend to, I think when we tend to be quiet, these quiet spaces, when we're not busy, then we're uncomfortable in those spaces because then those tasks that we tend to do, they kind of shelter our brain and our heart from all of the worries, from
Mhm.
those
Yeah.
pinging thoughts that we have back and forth.
What we're not always addressing is the deeper discontentment that happens in quiet spaces
Right.
when I'm alone and I'm not looking at my phone, I'm not distracted, and I'm kind of just supposed to be really resting or whatever. My mind might wander to places of discontent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's so uncomfortable. So then I reach back for the phone or I reach back for like a dumb task just to give myself a little dopamine relief. And I all of a sudden start to like, as a mom, you're like, I'm going to take this underwear drawer and redo the whole thing and like figure what are these socks? And you're like, what the heck? This is not even productive. I should not be doing this today. I have all these other things to do. We're seeking something to make us feel successful, alive, better. And it's like, if we could feel deeper contentment, being alone in that quiet space wouldn't be so needy and so uncomfortable.
No, and I think that's where our body gets restless.
Yeah. Well, it
So,
gets
so,
super
so
dysregulated. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And so we tend to grab our phone, but if we can replace those, so just even thinking about gratitude, I'm a journaler. So first thing every morning, I even set my alarm. I get up on my school days at 4:40 because I've got to be out of the door at 6:30 to head to school. And I want a good hour of quiet time to just calm my mind and have some pleasant space.
Yeah.
That's a practice I do. Now, I
Hmm.
don't I don't encourage everyone to get up at 4:40, but I also fall asleep about 8 o'clock at night too. But
You're like, I
so
still am on farm time.
yeah, um, on old people time is what we're on, but a simple replacement task, because I think this is what's really important, is that we tend to say, okay, I'm not going to do these things, but then we don't have replacement
Yep.
things. So it's really important that if you're wanting to cultivate more gratitude or cultivate more contentment, just take a simple marker in your day or take another obstacle. So rather than grabbing your phone in order to scroll so that you don't feel as restless, but it's going to build discontentment, what can you grab? What can you put in your environment that is something you actually enjoy that you can go to, whether it's looking to that thing, whether it's touching that thing. And then in doing that, the rhythm and the practice is just to say one or two things that you're grateful for. Right?
Mm.
Like in an ideal world, everyone's going to start off with a gratitude journal, for an hour before their day starts or at the end of the day. Well, we all know that especially if you've got a lot of kids at home, that's not practical. So
Yeah.
if you
No,
do
it's
this,
not.
if you're sitting in the car line, if you're waiting for one of your kids at practice, what are you doing while you drive? Can it be turning off your radio? So that's a practice that I share that
Hmm.
I often do on the way to school is turn off the radio. Don't listen to podcasts. And
Hmm.
during that time, start making that mental list of gratitude.
Yeah.
What am I grateful for? What happened yesterday? Or even have a rhythm of when you wake up to be grateful for, a new beginning. What is new about the day that you are really grateful for? And then at the end of the day, scroll through that list of what happened today that I really loved. What happened today that I really want to make a big deal about? And I'm a big proponent of making a big deal about small things because those are the things that we tend to overlook. Like in my own discontentment journey, I had published 2 books. I had, a master's degree. I'd done all these things. And yet I found myself, I was always looking at what I needed to do next.
Yeah.
So to other people, they're like, Brenda, why are you complaining about what you haven't done yet? Let's look at what you have done. And when we're in that place of discontentment, we will always be looking at what's out of our reach and not what we have that should fill us up.
Yeah. What we wish could be happening or what we want outside of this moment. I want to think about the obstacles, like really labeling those to accessing the state of contentment. Because I think we can say, oh yes, thinking about ways to replace, like when I want to go for my phone, instead I'm going to pause, think of two things that I loved about today or like that I like in this moment, or name the five colors. Like you can do so many different strategies. But the bigger picture is, I think we have to tackle a little bit of the bigger stuff that leads to discontentment. I was thinking about, like you were talking about your career, really. You would write a book and do all this success, and then you're like, okay, what's next? And so that's like one of the areas I think that can be an area of our life where we find ourselves very discontent, always seeking more, better,
Mhm.
next. Then, of course, our home, you kind of talk about that a lot in the book, of like getting new furniture, new decor. It's like more, it's, oh, it's not good enough. I want to get this. I want to do that. And it's not like anything's wrong with that. It's just kind of noticing what our reason is for it.
Mhm.
And if you're seeking to feel good, did it work?
You're exactly
Mhm.
right. And so, yeah, the obstacles, there's a whole section, each chapter about the obstacles of attaining the virtue, the mindset, the behavior. And one thing I mentioned is doubt. And what you
Mhm.
talked about really identified that doubt. It's kind of the if when, then I'm finally going to feel, I'm finally going to be at the place where I want to be.
Yeah, like, oh, if we could
When,
just get a new couch, everything will be so much better.
right,
Like this, my whole problem is my couch. And like
right.
it's like constantly dirty, or the kids broke it, or so once I get a new couch, I'm gonna feel so much better. And then it's like big, and then you get the couch and you're like, well, that chair doesn't match.
Mhm.
And then now it's like, well, I gotta get this chair. It's like I think about, as a life coach, how can you be happy with your couch? Because if you can be happy or content or like satisfied with what you currently have, then when you replace that thing, it's not because you need something from it. You already have everything you want and need. And if you pursue more, better, different, it's not in order to get a better feeling. It's like I'm bringing my feeling with me into my next experience. So that's one of my things about contentment. And I think I thought of it when you were talking about it. And I think this happens to women in my audience too, is that there's a feeling like I can't settle for what I already have. Like I'll get lazy. You can't rest on your laurels. Like you should, there's an American value system of like keep doing more, being more, achieving more. And it can almost seem lazy to be okay with today as it is. And I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit, what your thoughts
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, I think as an Americanized culture, we are driven to perform. So what you just
Hmm.
described is performance.
Yeah.
And actually that drives a lot of anxiety because a lot
It's,
of
yes.
anxiety is driven by performance. Whereas if you go to other cultures, like a lot of the Mediterranean cultures, or I've been to India a couple of times, I'm on a board of directors for a medical clinic there. And when you're in other cultures where you observe people enjoying life, one thing I observed in a lot of other cultures is they're not striving for the next thing. Because when you're striving for the next thing, even in your own thought process, you're missing what's happening now. And I
Yeah.
think that's why that question about what if today is as good as it gets is so striking. And it was so impactful for me, is because when I really think about when I'm going to be content, and this was my thought process, I think back when this question really challenged me, is when I'm retired, when I've
Mhm.
got time on my hands, when all my kids are at a place where their life is all settled. Well, I'm somewhat on that journey. My kids all have their own spaces in life. They're all professionals. Life doesn't get less complicated. And there's no guarantees in life. So I'm
Mhm.
also coming through a season where multiple people around me have died, and they died quickly from cancer or from accidents. My husband had a near fatal accident. I'm at the place where this has really become real. And I
Yeah.
think for us as Americans, and I think for any mom who's listening, that if we were to just step back and have that pause of calm, like you were talking about, that pause of prudence to say, if this season, thinking about seasons of life, but also seasons of the school year, as you enter into the holiday season, as you enter into those slower months of winter. What can I do this season, even from November to February, that I'm going to cultivate a sense of contentment and gratitude in just this season? If in this season where my family's at right now, what can we really jump in and enjoy? What can I hold off in needing to change or plan for? Because I know for myself as a parent, when I was in my 20s, I was always thinking about what was going to be next in my 30s. And then when I was in my 30s, it was all about what was going to happen in the next stage of my children's lives.
Mhm.
And when your kids start leaving the nest, you realize this is it, there's no more. And then when they leave, you kind of have this values clarification of what just happened and what am I doing now?
Mhm.
But I want to talk to all moms is that contentment really is just about this full cup. I talk about,
Yeah, yeah. Talk a little
empty
bit
cup.
about the full cup, empty
Yeah.
cup, half
Yeah.
empty cup.
Half
Yeah.
empty cup. Do you look at a situation or your life or a relationship, expectations, whatever it is, do you look at it as a half empty cup or a half full cup? Because our perspective is what the difference is. Facts are it's a cup that's halfway full of water.
Yes.
If you're thirsty, that is going to be so refreshing.
Hmm.
But if you are discontent, you're going to look at that cup and say, well, I'm not even going to drink that much because it's not even going to quench my thirst.
Yeah.
When you
Hmm.
drive in the middle lane, whether it's middle lane of contentment, like being content with what you were talking about, if I'm content, well, then the fear is I'm not going to reach my goals. Most of the world and in past generations, they lived in the middle lane. You accelerate when you need to get around obstacles and to get where you need to go, but you go back to center lane. You go back to a balanced life. You go back to a balanced thinking. And sometimes you slow down. But if
Hmm.
you slow down all the time, then you aren't going to get where you need to go. And so we really have lost the art of life balance.
I think it has to do
And
with a little bit of self-trust too. Like as I've learned, when I trust that sometimes I'm going to have my foot to the pedal and I'm going to be pushing the gas and I'm going to be achieving some things and moving life forward in some way. And then sometimes I'm not. I'm going to let off the gas if something tragic happens or something disruptive or a life transition. Your children change, they grow up or whatever it happens. You change jobs, stuff like that. Okay. I'm going to back off. I'm going to reassess and trusting that I can always put my foot on the gas and I can always
yes.
let it go. And then I'm not going to become a person who just pulls off on a rest stop and just lives there. Like, who wants to live in the rest stop in the middle of like some random highway? Nobody. Well, maybe somebody, but not me. And I can trust that. I can trust that I think I was very afraid. I used to say a lot like self loathing is excellent motivation. And I didn't really believe that if I didn't have that itch all the time that I would give up. And it's just not true. And I think that is about our own belief, like in ourselves.
Yeah. And I think your analogy of going back to eating and feeling full,
Hmm.
like I have a history of an eating disorder. So the
Yeah.
the whole thing of being full or feeling hungry, that has a lot of meaning to me. But I
Yep.
think for us as women, especially, we're socialized to perform. I mean, that's
Hmm.
just the bottom line. We as American women have not been socialized to not perform. And so much of our contentment or of our perception of happiness or our perception of the life we really want, we don't see that modeled well of maybe what we would consider successful women who have values that they're living out and they're achieving, but it's done in moderation, but it's still what we would see as successful.
There's tropes, right? Like a
Right,
successful woman who doesn't ever spend any time with her children or something like
right,
that.
right.
It's like
We,
we're forced into boxes if you choose to pursue. Sometimes you can be accused of not being content.
right,
So we don't have good models of like, no, I want to be a kick-ass business owner and also I have an amazing life just as it is. Like
right.
I'm good. I'm good if we get it. I'm good if we don't. I'm good if we make
Right,
it. I'm good if we
right.
don't.
Because
Yeah.
that message is not what is put before us. But in every chapter in Uncomplicated, I have a question for each of us to think of the person in our life who models that value. And we all have them. And I think part of what my encouragement is through the message in Uncomplicated and through some of those rhythms is to think about who is it in my life that when I think about contentment, they automatically come to mind. And let's keep that person in front of us and then ask ourselves, what about them do I want to emulate? It really helps us step back and think, you know what? I actually can achieve that, can achieve it in my life. And I know what it would look like if I wanted contentment in my life, in this season of my life, or in this area of my life, whether it's my relationship with my spouse or with my children, or I'm really struggling with that materialism, or I can't go back to work yet because my kids are too young. I really want to stay at home, but I feel like I'm not achieving anything. What would it look like to have contentment in your life the way you would like it to be, like you can envision in that person? Because when we have something to look towards, again, going back to modeling, then we see and then we do. These practices that I encourage throughout the book really are about doing that. Let's think about who and what we want to emulate, what we want in our life, and then what do I need to do the next steps to do that? And it really is as uncomplicated as that.
I was thinking of an exercise I did a few years ago because I was very unhappily married. My husband and I were struggling, and I was not sure what if it was me, if it was actually him, what was happening. Like I did, I was. Am I happy and he's just not, we're not a good fit, or like, am I unhappy and he's me? I was so confused. So what I did, I challenged myself. I said, I am happily married because. And I kind of forced myself to find evidence that that could be true. Now,
Mhm.
this is, of course, we had a decent relationship. We're still married. We got through it.
Mhm.
It's not, you don't want to gaslight yourself if you're being in an abusive relationship, but he was just kind of a regular dude. I'm a regular gal. And I just found out that I was. I'm like, I thought I was so discontent and that he needed to change 100 things and da, da, da. When I looked at evidence of like, maybe things are okay, maybe things are good enough. What if it was true? Then when I did that, I actually found a few very specific areas where it wasn't true. And then we could have a conversation about making those improvements. And it was very powerful for me to just, I am a good mom because I'm happily married because I'm a success in my career because my house is good enough because I wonder what you'd find.
I love that. And that's a very similar exercise that I do with clients too, which is just to make a T chart. So we just call them lies and truth. Go to
Hmm.
that default. What is the lie? The lie
Yeah.
is my marriage can't be happier until. It's that doubt again. It's that
Yes.
if then
Yes.
or when, what if you put down the lie and
Hmm.
you put down the truth right beside it, because what our brains do default to the negative, but our brain
Yeah.
needs new information. So that's the other thing that needs a replacement behavior. So the replacement narrative. So what you just modeled for the audience is a new narrative.
Hmm.
And that's what I've had to do with myself. Even just going to contentment with my body, with my
Yeah.
weight,
Yep.
with my level of exercise. I'm in midlife, and theoretically I should be working out, I should be eating certain foods, I should be taking
You
these
better be eating more protein,
I
Brenda.
should be doing this. I do. We butcher our own meat. We've
I'm
got a
just
whole
teasing you. You don't
freezer
need to
full of meat.
justify it. It
But
was a joke.
what I don't do though is I value my sleep. I value my sleep
Mm.
and that personal quiet time. I value
Hmm.
that more than I do exercise right now. Now I'm pretty active because I do work with young kids, so I'm always on the go. I get many steps in, but I have to tell myself rather than say I should be doing more because that's going to prevent this when I'm 70. The narrative
Yeah.
would be for my age, I'm fairly healthy
Mhm.
because XYZ. I do eat what I should. I do avoid these things. And in moderation, I do these things. And my sleep and my mental health is my top priority now, rather than having the best looking body like
Yeah.
I wanted when I was 30. And midlife, I can have grace to have a midlife body and I can be content with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just challenging yourself of like, can this be good enough? Can this be okay?
Mhm.
And what if it already is? What if it's already good enough? Just kind of like, I mean, I talked about this this episode will come out right after I did a cognitive behavioral therapy,
Mm-hmm.
what that is. And we talked a lot about mindset and reframing. And I use this metaphor around a kaleidoscope. And it's like the kaleidoscope looks one way, you shift it just a little bit, it looks totally different. And so it's kind of like what we're doing with our default thinking of like, I'm fat. I'm not in good shape. I'm not in good shape. I'm not in good shape for the future age. I will be,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and it's like, okay, well, why don't you just try out I am?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because it's all just thoughts. Not anyone is truer than the other. Really, you are whatever size you are. And what if it's okay? Sometimes you can't get your brain to go that far, but you can challenge it to start to possibly maybe see that your body's okay or your children's behavior isn't as terrible as you think it is. Sometimes they're acting out, which is evidence of their emotional dysregulation. That's fine. What if that's okay? What if we want our kids to make mistakes? What if we want meltdowns? What if meltdowns are the best thing that could also possibly happen today? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's a chance for connection and learning and growth. It's like we think the number on the scale is too high. If I have a messy house, I don't do date night for a month or whatever we think. And if I haven't worked out, then everything is terrible. And I'm on a bad path and I better fix it. And then I always say, fix it, change it, stop it, solve it. And it's like, what if this was like you said, what if this is as good as it gets, and that's okay? What if this is great?
Yeah.
And that is our challenge, right?
Yeah. And I think that's really what we just need to settle into. Is my cup half full? Is it half empty? To another person, our lives are always a cup that is more full than someone else's. I know when you're in the busy seasons, when you're raising kids and you're in your 20s and your 30s, or even in midlife and you got teenagers, it is just hard. The last thing you want to do is reflect. And when you do, it's probably a bunch of cuss words that you're going to say because what you're living is not what you had thought you were going to be living. But the bottom line is what we're experiencing is never the period until the period really comes. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not the end of the sentence. It's not the end of the story. As I walk with people who have life-altering experiences, but I see people who have walked through adversity with a sense of contentment and satisfaction. Not that they're really okay with what's happened, but there's an element there to say, this is my life, and I can be sad and have joy in it at the same time.
Yeah. I think contentment requires that ability to hold two things at the same
Mhm.
time. I can be sad and okay. I can be
Mhm.
disappointed and be okay. I can want more, but be okay with today. And
Mhm.
it is hard for our human brain to do that, to like hold all, they almost seem like they're contradictory emotions at the same time. And it's hard, but it's really, we are capable of it.
Well,
Of,
we are because we're human. It's how we're designed.
yeah.
And I
Mhm.
think that when we are able to say, you know what, there's nothing different about me as a human than the humans who lived 40 years ago, 140 years ago, except for our environment.
Yeah.
I still have the capacity to problem solve and to be content.
Yep.
So we can take on as much as what the world gives us, or we can take on in moderation as much as what we want to accept from what the world gives us.
Yeah. We have a
And
lot of agency.
yeah, just looking at our own needs, all of our behavior comes from unmet needs.
Hmm.
As we can look at those unmet needs and as we can get those needs met through healthy resources,
Hmm.
then the more
Hmm.
content we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the takeaway can be just chase it. Chase
Mhm.
contentment. I often talk about what do you want to feel? Like, what are you chasing? What experience or feeling you're chasing? Because it kind of sets us up towards where we're going. And it's like, if you're listening to this episode and you're feeling really like a lot of life feels hard and there's a lot of unhappiness, I'm going to choose contentment. I'm going to chase it. I'm going to try to figure out how to bring more of it in each moment. Like, how can I be okay with this? Well, thank you so much, Brenda, for being a podcast guest on Become a Calm Mama. How do people find out about you? How do they get the
Yes.
book? How do they connect with you?
Yeah, they
Tell
can
us.
get the book at probably any online retailer or in-store retailer. I know it's been in some Barnes and Noble's bookstores across the country.
And it's called
Uncom
Uncomplicated.
Uncomplicated Simple Secrets for a Compelling Life. they can find me at brendayoder.com. I'm also on Instagram at Brenda Yoder Speaks and on Facebook at Brenda Yoder Speaker. And I also host a Midlife Moms podcast too.
Nice. Yeah. Well, have me on there because it'd be fun to keep our conversation
Yes.
going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. And then everyone can listen to us talk more. That'd be great.
Well, I would love to do that.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
Hey, Mama, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, I want to encourage you to do two things. The first is go to my website, calmmamacoaching.com, and get a copy of the Stop Yelling cheat sheet. You'll get a step-by-step breakdown of the most important tool I teach, which is the pause break. And you'll also get 40 ideas to reset your body and balance your nervous system so you don't have to yell at your kids. You can get a copy of that, again, at my website, calmmamacoaching.com/stop yelling. The other thing I'd love for you to do is go to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this podcast so that other moms can discover empowering and helpful, practical parenting strategies just like you did today. Thanks so much for listening to the podcast. It means a lot to be in your ear every week and to support you on your parenting journey.